sundering homes, splintering shields and ringing swords.
And I'm curious, when you were starting this project, weren't you a little bit scared after what happened with the first spin-off?
Yeah, I live my life in anxiety and terror, but I think part of that is just being a writer. I mean, you can't approach a project like this defensively. I think you have to take a point of view on it and pursue making the thing that you feel confident as a creator in making. And I think this is very much the show that Miguel and I set out to make at the beginning.
How hard was it to take the source material from George and bound it so nicely to show it on the screen? Because as you can see, his books are very detailed but very long, so it's not a perfect source material to squeeze it to the episodes.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, this one, because I think it's a much different, even though it's the same world as Game of Thrones was, A Song of Ice and Fire is a much different piece of original source material than Fire and Blood is. Fire and Blood is a fake history, as George calls it. So you get a lot of the details of what happened, but you don't really see a lot between the lines. It's really him telling you these events happen in history, and there are these three conflicting accounts, and this person says this happened, and no, this is why it happened. So you don't, in the original book, you got into the heads of the characters, and you could read their internal thoughts, and there were big blocks of dialogue. This Fire and Blood is very different. You only get snippets of dialogue and an idea of this happened on this day and then it led to this event. But what you don't get is all those moments of palace intrigue and the quiet conversations that happen in the corridors of the Red Keep. And that's part, not having that as a challenge because you have to invent it. But part of the fun, I think, of this is how much latitude that we got within the book, where we can be incredibly faithful adapters, but also
you can play with the world.
Have a ton of invention along the way. Exactly.
And also I'm curious because if you have such a big franchise like Game of Thrones and you're doing a prequel, there's this urge probably inside that let's put some Easter eggs, like show them that, remember this one? We have it. Do you guys were actually doing it, or you were forcing yourself not to connect to the main franchise, doing 100 for yourself without this winking of the eye?
I think we have a complicated relationship with Easter eggs. I mean, they're fun, but I think particularly in now, as we see a lot of sequels and lega sequels, as they call them, and prequels of these famous franchises that have been around for decades, you can delve too far into that, I think, and make the story too much about nostalgia and reminiscence. Look, there's definitely connectivity between House of the Dragon and the original series, but 170 years have passed. That's a lot of time. So I think you will see things fleetingly, but I think they're more substantial in terms of their connectivity, the quote unquote Easter eggs, in this story than you would probably see in another prequel.
And something that caught my eye is during those 170 years, not much things change in the world of Westeros. Like, they didn't invent anything. Was it hard not to, trying to level them down a little bit to show the progress?
Well, I mean, that's the challenge of this story, is that it is 170 years in the past. It's really more 200 years in terms of the beginning of the original series versus where we are now. But this is based on the European Middle Ages, and we know that time did not move very fast back in those days. They're still riding horses. Nobody's invented a car. So what's changed is fashion and taste and sensibility a bit. The castles are a little bit newer than they were because they're 200 years more recent. But the trick with this series is because it's a richer, more decadent time. I mean, this is the height of the Targaryen Empire. We kind of likened it to this is Rome when Rome was still standing versus after the Vikings and the Vandals had raided the city and burned the Library of Alexandria. The original series, even though it's deeper into the future, is more of a time of decline and decay, whereas this is the shining height of Camelot when it was still the city on the hill.